Well, hello everybody. It is March 6th, 2024, and this is the RambleCast. I'm your host, Cody Toombs, and with me is Corbin Davenport. And holy crap, so much stuff this week. So much stuff. I mean, it's wild. Wild, I tell you. Also, Corbin is having internet troubles, so okay, so the problem is likely you doing the download and not... Oh, wait. No audio on Corbin. Wait, what? Oh. Now... Yeah, okay, that's my fault. Hold on one second. Okay, try speaking. Okay, that's fixed. Meet resets its audio source settings a lot of times. That was the issue.
Cool.
Yeah. I set it, it doesn't remember. Also, sometimes I set it and I have to change it back because of other things. That stupid weekly meeting that has no relevance. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so fortunately you barely said anything. I've been babbling a lot. Anyway, it's a RambleCast. It wouldn't be a RambleCast without some technical difficulties, right?
That's true. No one should hear what I say ever.
I mean, I've only said that in private. But anyway.
It was not private.
I mean, it was semi-private. Let's see. Brawl. Corbin's Netscape Navigator experiments led to the internet issues. Look, I mean, we can't rule anything out. I'm just saying.
I don't know what I do with Netscape, but
Mozilla has a history. It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, speaking of companies that probably don't really exist, shouldn't exist, or could have existed once and may have changed in their entirety, I guess we may as well start talking immediately about Yuzu. Oh, Yuzu. The chaos, the catastrophe this week, holy cow, has been a week. Out of curiosity, do you want to be the chief summarizer in chief on this one, or shall I?
You can't. This is one of those things that I was only aware of through what other people have been saying. I don't care enough about this to have read the lawsuit or anything else related to it.
Oh, you might be overassuming my awareness of this topic, but anyway, for those that don't know, the immediate upfront take on this, or the upfront knowledge that everybody should have is that Yuzu is a Nintendo Switch emulator, or rather it was a Nintendo Switch emulator. We talked about it last week. The short version is Nintendo decided to sue it because they don't like it. And the reasons are varied between totally legitimate and oftentimes not as legitimate. But the super short version is Yuzu allowed you to play Nintendo Switch games on a PC or Android device. And it theoretically required that you dump some security or some encryption keys from a Nintendo Switch in order to play. The fact of the matter is, it was actually also pretty easy to get those keys from the internet and be able to play whatever games you wanted. In a more direct sense.
Now, I have done that. I've done that because I have my image share web app, which is the primary development target for that is the Nintendo 3DS family of consoles. But at this moment I only have a new 3DS. I don't have an original 3DS because I sold mine forever ago. So I haven't been able to test it on a normal 3DS for a while. But I finally set up the Citra emulator, which is also now effectively discontinued.
Yes.
And I set it up on my Mac, and you know what? It's great. It's great for. I'm the only person doing web browser debugging on a 3DS emulator.
Wow. And it's kind of I was just gonna go somewhere, but I think I'll leave that alone. Anyway, yeah, so Nintendo decided it didn't like Yuzu. And the reasons, depending on who you ask and what version of the story you're looking at, can vary, but in all likelihood, part of this is certainly Nintendo just hating emulators. Nintendo has a history of being sort of anti-emulator, which isn't hard to understand, and maybe we'll dive deeper into that shortly, but in essence, they may also have a problem with Yuzu in large part because it specifically targets a current generation console, and also because it happened to be very closely tied with the leak of a game which had not yet been released, and when it was released, Yuzu, I believe, was the only emulator that could play it. I might have that wrong.
I'm not sure. I know it was the main one people were trying. It was Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes,
that was the one that got leaked early, and then everyone played it, which probably was. It seems like that's what set off Nintendo's alarm bells.
I'm sure they were just looking for an excuse, but yes, once that happened, they definitely had it. So yeah, anyway, Nintendo did decide, and this was announced just 2 days ago, I think, that Nintendo was suing Yuzu, and promptly Yuzu then had to settle the lawsuit. Their settlement is for a relatively paltry $2.4 million. I have a guess on what that might involve. Plus, they basically have to destroy any hardware and any software that they used related to their emulator, development for their emulator, etc., etc. And they came out with a statement, I'll read that shortly, that is nothing short of basically a message saying, we have a gun to our head, we have to say that everything we did was awful, please don't ever look at us again, we apologize to the gods that are Nintendo. Anyway, do you feel that my summary is in any way lacking in detail?
No, just, just the fact that like Nintendo didn't win or lose here, they settled, so it doesn't really set like a legal anything, like nothing was really
there's no legal
here.
precedent here.
Yeah, and the impression I got is that a lot of the arguments they were using kind of just apply to all emulators, but I think Yuzu flew a little bit too close to the sun. I think that was the issue, where they had number one, you're emulating a current gen console. So this is the one that Nintendo's still trying to sell and sell games for. So that was what set it apart from everything else. They had a Patreon, which I don't think is all that common with emulators. I don't know if I've seen that before myself, but I'm not. I don't pay attention to a lot of them.
I
More,
know some emulators have had at least like you're welcome to donate here.
yeah. I've seen, yeah, a lot of them have donate links. But the Patreon was maybe pushing a little bit too much because it's recurring, and also they were putting pre-release builds on the Patreon exclusively for a period of time. So you're getting really close to functionally being a commercial emulator for a current gen console. So yeah, again, I'm not going to defend Nintendo, but they gave them a lot. They gave Nintendo a lot to work with there,
Yeah.
and there. I know the lawsuit specifically was mentioning the Zelda game leak, and how the game was widely played before it was actually out and people could buy it for the Switch. And I don't really think the emulators at fault there. Whoever leaked the game, but that's fine. I don't have millions of dollars to tell Nintendo otherwise.
So there are also some rumors slash theories that possibly the leak of the game may have also somehow contributed to development of the emulator.
Yeah, like they were bug fixing the emulator based on the performance of the game. Again, I don't know if that's real either, but that's the
Yeah. Well, it seems that there may have been some reverse engineering opportunities made available through that leak. What that exactly involves, I don't know. Oh, Brawl, you're right. I did forget to ping Discord. I will do that now. Thank you.
I will not. No one else show up.
Oh. Oh, Brawl already did it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm, annoyed by this. Again, I care more personally about the Citra emulator. But it seems like that was already effectively abandoned. The devs were mostly just working on Yuza. Yeah, just it's annoying. It seems, again, this is all kind of part of a bigger issue of game ownership and what you own and backwards compatibility. Less so with Yuzu, because again, that's emulating a current gen console. I can walk into a store and go buy a Switch right now and play probably all the same games. I don't know if maybe there are some notable Switch games that have been delisted or something like that in the time since it came out, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've only really tried running Yuzu once, and in my brief, literally like barely a minute trial of it, it worked, but not. It only worked for one game. There was a second one I tried, and it didn't work on that one. And the one that I did try, it worked, but I could already detect at least some slight weirdness. So yeah, it seemed to work well enough for the one, but I haven't spent any time with it. So
yeah, and kind of there's kind of been two trends coming out of this. Number one is other emulators kind of getting a little freaked out. The Verge wrote an article about the Drastic emulator for the Nintendo DS. They reverted the app to free on the Play Store. They're not charging for it. And I think the dev said he's kind of done working on that anyway, so it's probably going to be removed at some point.
Watch as it keeps getting updates like every week.
Yeah.
No, I swear I'm done with it. I swear. It was just a bug fix.
Yeah, and then kind of the other thing, sorry, I lost my train of thought. The other thing that's come up is Yuzu, and a lot of the associated tools, I don't know if all of them, are open source. So there's been people throwing up mirrors of the source code, the last builds. Theoretically, someone could keep working on it. I would put money on there not being another high profile dev team working on this. I think it's entirely possible there'll be some forks that will maybe get some bug fixes. But I think anyone who tries to put a lot of time into this, unless they're like, I mean, even if they're making zero money from it, it seems like Nintendo has an argument to go get them again. You know, even if it's different people, if it's the same project and this theoretically the same tools that were allowing what they deemed as piracy. So,
yeah. So, I feel like there are a couple of angles on this one. For starters, I guess may as well hop over to this one. There is already an attempted sort of, I guess, spin-off, which is called Suyu. The name is very much a nod and a wink to the fact that Nintendo is suing Yuzu.
FLM's heading out. See ya. Have fun. Have fun sleeping.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a link to it. The notable thing on Suyu that I think really needs to immediately be called out is, let's see, where do they say it? Status. We're trying to get the builds working. We're in need of developers. Join the Discord to contribute. This feels like a message pretty much directly saying, yeah, no, we forked it. We don't actually know what we're doing. Please come help us.
Me with every project I try to contribute to. Like, hold on, guys. How's this work?
Yeah.
What's this button do?
So whether or not this one actually takes off, I don't know if this one will go anywhere. But hypothetically, it could, if it at a bare minimum, it has the right name to go somewhere. It'll probably get attention just for that. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to touch this. It's radioactive. Like, to me, this is the same thing as, so kind of one case where this is something like this has happened, not exactly, is the Wine project, where Wine is a reverse engineering of the Windows APIs, and they're very careful to not use anything that could ever be owned or claimed by Microsoft ever, for fear of retaliation lawsuits. And like, even, you know, there's been a couple instances now where part of Windows' source code is leaked. Sometimes with, I think it's mostly been like earlier versions, but there's been a lot of leaks of that. And every single time, Wine has told people, like, if you looked at that code, don't fucking write Wine code. We don't, stay away. Like,
Yeah.
we don't need you accidentally, you know, even accidentally, like, oh, so that's how that, you know, Win32 API works. Let me just put it in. And Wine's like, no, go away. So, like, I think that's gonna happen where there's gonna, you know, there's obviously another Switch emulator. There's gonna be future Switch emulators, just like there is for every other game console. I think all of them will probably not touch that code, or even look at it. I think that's too much of a liability. I think the only wiggle room I would have in that is, obviously Nintendo didn't like get them on anything, because again, they didn't, it didn't actually go to a lawsuit basically, and their issue was primarily more with how they were handling piracy and maybe some of that, like, testing against a leaked game kind of thing. We don't really know, but I think it's too much of a liability for pretty much anyone to touch it. Maybe someone in like Russia or another country that just does not care about like international lawsuits. Like Russia doesn't care.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to hit is a lot of emulators already kind of have a history of being tied to countries where to put it very simply, copyright law is sort of a stretch.
This could be North Korea's new export. Like this is some serious opportunity. I mean, I know they're apparently really good at making ransomware. So I think that this could maybe be a good opportunity to branch out if they want.
Look, they're already neighbors with one of the best countries for gaming, like competitive gaming. Mm-hmm. It's not a stretch to say that they might just turn around one day and say, look, your gaming copyright, not a thing here. We're going to do our own thing. Which, don't get me wrong, would be a little hilarious if their strategy to destabilize our economy was like, yeah, we're just going to make all your games super piratable.
Open source projects.
Yeah. Oh, that honestly not the worst strategy I've heard. But yeah, if all things considered, I feel like this isn't as radioactive as that. It certainly is radioactive, but I could see so many Eastern European countries just sort of casually saying, you know what? Well, not the countries themselves, but developers in those countries basically just casually saying, we really aren't affected by your copyright laws. Mm-hmm. We don't care. We're gonna pick this up and use it because we can. I mean, that is the reality with several other emulators. A lot of emulators have been built up in generally Eastern Europe, so it's not that unreasonable to think that somebody there is probably going to look at this and go, yeah, no, we're into this. We'll pick up this mantle. It's a great hobby project, and we don't mind ruining Nintendo's profits. Austin, I like that. North Korea's nuclear missile program does depend on N64 controllers. Is that true? I feel like that actually is true.
Well, ours depends on floppy disks, so I don't know who's winning here.
Hey, security through obscurity, sir. Anyway, I really quickly, I have to read it verbatim. The message that was posted by Yuzu, because I have never read something that read more like a hostage situation than this. Quote, hello Yuzers and Citra fans. We write today to inform you that Yuzu and Yuzu's support of Citra are being discontinued effective immediately. Yuzu and his team have always been against piracy. We started the project in good faith, out of passion for Nintendo and its consoles and games, and were not intending to cause harm. But we see now that because our project can circumvent Nintendo's technological protection measures and allow users to play games outside of authorized hardware, they have led to extensive piracy. In particular, we have been deeply disappointed when users have used our software to leak game content prior to its release and ruin the experience for legitimate purchasers and fans. We have come to the decision that we cannot continue to allow this to occur. Piracy was never our intention, and we believe that piracy of video games and on video game consoles should end. Effective today, we will be pulling our code repositories offline, discontinuing our Patreon accounts and Discord servers, and soon shutting down our websites. We hope our actions will be a small step towards ending piracy of all creators' work. Thank you for your years of support and for understanding our decision. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, the bye-bye was not part of the quote. But no, seriously. You can tell this was... I don't think this was written by Nintendo, but I have a feeling that Nintendo's lawyers gave them a series of notes basically saying, you need to say this, 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 and this, and anything that does not show us in the highest of regard is going to get you sued even deeper.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I just flew too close to the sun. Yeah. Again, I'm sure there's at least one other Switch emulator. I'm sure there'll be others. Just not this one. Don't do this again.
Yeah. Wait, is this... I don't see any Nintendo 64 controllers in that link. Am I missing something? I see a Microsoft trackball though. Or wait, no, that's Logitech, sorry. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, so I get the impression Nintendo dictated the terms of this surrender pretty directly. Yuzu did not fight against it, and my going theory, because the one variable that doesn't quite make sense is the fact that they specifically had a $2.4 million settlement. My going theory is that's exactly how much they had an account from Patreon. Maybe I'm wrong. It could be any other explanation, but I have a feeling Nintendo basically told them, if you hand over everything, if you basically have no profit to show from this, we'll let you walk. And I have a feeling that that's probably what they ended up doing. There's probably exactly 2.4 million or, whatever in change in an account somewhere, and it just got transferred to Nintendo, or will be once the judge accepts this settlement. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, this just feels like the developers were basically told, here are all the requirements. If you do everything we tell you, we won't ruin your lives. And evidently they recognize that as the cost of doing business. So truly, hopefully, I'd like to see other emulators continue. I'd like to see them succeed. I'm really sad to see this happen, because I think, like a lot of people, I was cheering on Yuzu. I wanted to see them fight. I wanted to see a company that a lot of people were already supporting. I wanted to see them basically defend the ability to archive your games. I wanted to see them challenge Nintendo, and I know the odds were against them, but I was hoping that this might lead to a legal decision basically defending right to emulate. It's not that there aren't already legal decisions on that, but Nintendo's particular DRM choices with the Switch kind of were a legal trapdoor where they created a situation it was very difficult to work around. And Yuzu questionably may have or may not have worked around it in a way that solved the DRM issues. But I would have liked to see them have a chance to actually fight this and win. I'm assuming that the reason that they backed out is either somebody did something very, very bad, or they were given some opportunity that was in itself a trapdoor. Basically, it ruined their ability to safely defend themselves. Whichever the case is, I do think that public at large lost with this situation. There's no legal decision here, which is great, but at the same time, there's no legal decision here, which sucks. It would have kind of been nice to see this actually go to court. And honestly, if it had gone to court, I don't think that any decision was going to be actually credible. Like, honestly, if this went to court, it would have been Yuzu and Nintendo both arguing on deeply, deeply technical levels. They would have been trying to explain away stuff that no jury's going to be able to understand. Well, short of like a jury of Silicon Valley, like all developers, maybe they might be able to follow along with these with these arguments, but other than that, I don't think anybody would have been able to follow this. It would have just come down to really the jury deciding, do we like Nintendo for locking stuff down, or do we like Yuzu for trying to enable archival and playing on the interface that feels appropriate to you. Whatever the case may be, that fight's not happening anytime in the near future. I do kind of wonder if this means Nintendo's working on picking their next target, or will they let the other Switch emulators go because none of them have amassed quite as much fame and popularity. Awesome. Yeah, no way the US government no way will the US government rule on copyright protection in regard to code. Yeah, well, we've seen enough complications in that subject just with like Google versus Oracle. The government certainly isn't going to want to get involved in that discussion any more than it has to. Anyway, so Corbin, any other comments?
Nope.
Okay. Quickly moving on, and I don't think there's a lot to say on this, but just briefly mentioning it, Google One in Europe now includes Fitbit Premium and Nest Aware. This is a bit of a change of course. They're merging together a couple of a few separate plans that used to cost individual prices, and now you can pay one price, which happens to be the classic Google One pricing, and get those other things for free, or rather included. The immediate comment I had when I first saw this was, wow, Google just doesn't want that extra money, huh? That's kind of cool. The follow-up logic, which I think is pretty sound, was maybe they want people to see these things all combined and basically treat this as kind of like a pleasant lock-in situation where you might have wanted or turned away from the 2 terabyte plan in the past. Now, if you feel so inclined, you really won't be able to ever downgrade. You're going to want to hold on to the 2 terabyte plan just because you'll also get the Fitbit Premium, Nest Aware, like all of it combined. You're not going to want to downgrade. And I could see a version where Google kind of just saw the writing on the wall and decided, yeah, let's just include all of it. Because it might be more profitable. Corbin, you actually had, I think, possibly the better take on this.
Did I?
That it's because of Gemini.
Oh, yeah, I know Gemini is not available in all countries. yet, but before the show, we did check uh, where it was available, and it appears to be in most European countries. So I'm not sure if that's it or not.
But even if it's not necessarily available in all countries, or sorry, even if it is available in most of them, it's still language limited for the most part. Which most of the EU is still not is not primarily English speaking. So one way or another, I think some aspect of this is people in the US get Gemini. People in the EU will get these other things instead. Maybe that's on, maybe it's off, but I could see that being kind of a good explanation for it, or at least for many people, it's a valid thing. Worst case scenario, Google's only losing a relatively small number of extra subscriptions as a result of this. David, yeah, I would like a cheaper AI plan too. I would actually very much consider going to a slightly more expensive plan than what I'm on if I could get it for cheaper than the $10 a month. Wait, is it 10 or 20?
I don't know how much Google's is. I know the Chat GPT one and the Copilot one are both 20 a month.
Yeah, I now that I'm thinking of it, come on. Navigating this page sucks. I know it's in monthly only. Okay, it's the $20 a month plan.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Plus $10. So Austin, does that mean you have to pay $30? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, see, this is also a bad deal for me because I've moved all of my stuff out of the Google ecosystem. So I am not the customer for Google One anymore.
Oh, just $10 for the 2 TB. Okay. I was gonna say that didn't seem right. So okay, it's $20 if you want the AI. Got it. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's all things considered, it's a good price if you're gonna make good use of it. But if you're not making a lot of use out of that, that's kind of a bad deal. So nevertheless, I think that this is probably not the worst deal, but it's good to see that Google is kind of finally incorporating different things into Google One. That's obviously been a ask for many years. It's been a topic repeatedly in the Discord. And now the EU seems to have it. I'm curious if we'll see it in the US. I do wonder if this is because of Gemini that we're seeing it happen in the UK so far, only in the UK. Maybe this is a test. Maybe it's something else. Understanding Google is always kind of questionable. But anyway, moving on. iOS 17.4. Go ahead, Corbin.
Yeah, so this is the big update that adds alternate app stores and side loading and third-party web browser engines and all that fun stuff, but only within the confines of the EU. In fact, even if you live in the EU, your Apple account is EU, and you travel outside the EU, all of that will only work for a little while, and then it'll eventually turn off. So it's all very silly, and none of that applies to the iPad, by the way, because the iPad did not meet the EU's uh, requirements to be regarded as a gatekeeping platform. Um, so that's fun. I wrote about this in an article on my site, basically just saying like it's wild to me that Apple now has a basically completely different operating system for Europe now. Like iOS is fundamentally a different platform in Europe now. I saw someone made the joke like, I don't want to hear anyone call Android fragmented ever again. I was like, yeah, okay. Like, yeah.
No, that's fair. I do take a little bit of exception to the notion that they're completely different operating systems, because as I see it, or the way I look at it, you can still build an app. It runs on both, like plain and simple. The difference is permissions rather than function. Um, Either way, yeah, this still looks really bad. It's so janky that there is so much of a functionality change tied specifically to a single country. It's one thing when like Microsoft had to like ask you during install time, hey, would you like to use our browser or someone else's browser? That was one thing. And it, you know, it was sometimes silly. The fact that they couldn't include media player in Europe for a long time. Like these were things that were dumb. They felt sort of childish, but it was still the same OS, plain and simple. And that's kind of what this is, but this somehow feels more petty. Which it certainly gets more petty in a minute. We'll be discussing more of that shortly, but yeah, this is such a weird situation, and Apple has created a very directly obvious conflict here.
Yeah, it's wild, and one of the, we'll get to it later, but one of the main alternative app stores that was supposed to happen was the Epic Store. They were going to make a launcher store thing for iPhone so that they could have Fortnite again. But now Apple suspended their Apple developer account, which you still need because all of the side-loaded iPhone apps still have to be notarized, just like macOS apps. So, yeah. So I maybe the EU will get onto them again. I don't know. That seems pretty. I honestly don't know, because really they have it. I can see an argument either way there. Like Apple said basically verbatim that like they took away Epic's dev key because they said that they complained about Apple. Basically, that's what happened. But also Apple's argument was like, yeah, they've broken our rules multiple times in the past, and like I guess if I'm trying to think of this from like just a random developer who was breaking App Store policies and then got banned and then did it again, or threatened to do it again or whatever, then like I guess, but it's just more large companies suing each other into oblivion over things that don't matter. So many, and again, like if Apple had just like done a better pay share in the first place, maybe none of this would have happened, because the whole Epic Store Fortnite situation was ammo for the EU to pass something. Obviously, a lot of other stuff also happened, like everything Microsoft has done with Windows in the past 20 years. But Apple maybe could have saved itself some frustration there.
Yeah. There's so many aspects of this that are it's a slap fight. It's obviously multi-billion-dollar companies, or multi-trillion as Apple's happens to be, basically slap fighting with each other over control. The weird thing about this is, like, yes, I kind of agree with if well, I don't agree with it, but if you take it without context, then yes, Epic Games is directly guilty of violating Apple's terms repeatedly and coming out against them repeatedly in ways that are, you know, sometimes I don't want to say toxic, that's the wrong term for it, but let's say openly hostile. Um but to be fair, developers have been calling out Apple for 15 years. Apple has been a hostile environment to developers, to large and small companies for years. They have been abusing market position for years. And I don't want to I don't want to understate this. There are people today who can vote, who could barely like form sentences when Apple started doing this stuff. I mean, Apple has a long, really tragic history of how it has abused its market position. And to say that Epic was not following Apple's terms and that gives Apple justification for basically calling them an untrustworthy developer, that's a stretch. You know, there's a pot kettle black situation here that is so blatant and in your face. Yeah. It's hard not to call it out as just flagrant disregard to not only what the EU has commanded, but even just common sense.
Yeah. And again, I would really like some of that stuff here. I would like going back to the topic, having a emulator on like my iPad or something. That'd be pretty cool. I did play some DOSBox on my Asus Transformer pad back in the day. Because it's actually that was the one with like a detachable keyboard. So it's like it's basically perfect form factor for that.
Yeah.
So yeah. And maybe all that stuff will change because the EU was also kind of looking into them how Corbin, you're doing a bad job of shilling for Apple. You're right. I gotta step it up. They were one of the really fun things with the iOS 17.4 update is that they almost killed web apps. When I don't know if it was in the first beta, but when one of the betas for the update came out, people noticed that web apps added to the home screen no longer worked, or they just opened in the default browser on the phone, whatever that browser was, in just normal browser interface. And that behavior was only in the EU. That web apps still worked everywhere else. And Apple's reasoning at the time was that it was just too complicated to get working with the EU's guidelines for what should be handled by what app. And then everyone complained because that's completely crazy. It doesn't really seem like that would be an issue, and they put it back in the final release, so this isn't an issue anymore. But I read their response, and they didn't really say like why it got removed in the first place. They just put it back. So I don't know if they just didn't check with anyone and they were being overly cautious, but in this case being overly cautious meant screwing over web developers. Like there was a lot of them that were really annoyed by this, also because web apps added to the home screen on iPhone and iPad get elevated permissions that aren't accessible. So like web apps on the home screen can use normal push notifications, and a website cannot do that if you only use it in Safari. And that was Apple's way of avoiding that. Like every time you go to a website, you get asked if you want push notifications or not. That was like their like that makes sense to me. That's fine. But because they chopped off that home screen functionality, like that, all the other stuff was also gone. So that was pretty worrying to me that they just almost killed web apps in like a big part of the world and put it back in without an explanation. That doesn't seem all that good. So, yeah, fun times.
Yeah, but also a very Apple thing to do.
Yeah, Apple's really weird because I follow some of the Safari dev people on Mastodon, and you know they'll talk about the stuff that's going to Safari, and like sometimes it does get new APIs really quickly, but there's always the underlying feeling of I think they're a little bit behind because they want people to make native apps instead. I think that's why this is happening.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that it's disappointing, but that narrative, as much as it sounds like people just sort of rationalizing, oh, here's why Safari's behind because they just want to push native apps. If you say that about like why, let's say, Microsoft seems to be behind on a particular thing, no, it's 9 times out of 10 it's just because Microsoft doesn't care about a thing and let it stagnate. But in this instance, I think it's actually true. I think very legitimately Apple is trying to say, yeah, not only do we not care about this thing, we're actively deciding to not support this thing because it will help this other thing that we care more about.
Yeah, so I can't play with all the cool stuff because I'm a stupid American. In the rest of the world, the update just adds. It has a couple new emoji, you know, super exciting stuff. Apple Podcasts now has transcriptions, which is the same thing that like Google Podcasts had like years ago, but I think is now dead because Google Podcasts is dying. And Spotify kind of has, but whenever I like read them, they were very wrong. I haven't really looked to see if Apple's any better there, but it's not even like it's like server side transcription too. It's not like on device or anything, so it's just in an OS update because Apple does app updates in OS updates. That's the only reason.
Yeah. So I linked to it a bit earlier, and I've kind of had it on screen for a bit, but Bloomberg did an editorial basically saying Apple is kind of bound to have the EU kick its ass. Basically, the Digital Markets Act has, to put it simply, Apple is just flaunting how much they disregard it. The changes that they made.
It is the most malicious compliance I've ever seen.
This is basically the thing. Like every single person has now said it. I mean, I literally put it into an episode title. Like, malicious compliance is the definition of this. It's Apple is not even hiding how little regard they have for the EU.
They are so mad. It is very rarely I read a press release and I can feel the person writing it just seething with anger. It's they wanted nothing to do with this. You know, even in their like developer documentation and shit, they're like,
yep.
You know, all these changes open up EU users to potentially dangerous software. We're doing our best to protect users in the scary EU Commission.
We're being forced to make you less secure.
I know, like fuck off. And it's the same exact notarization stuff that Mac OS has.
Yeah.
It's like, is Mac OS like super dangerous? No, it's fine. Generally pretty safe. You know, sometimes there's malware, but that's usually in like pirated software.
You're right.
So,
Yeah, and in all honesty, like, there's no way not to see that Apple is just completely disregarding what the EU actually intends. I mean, everything that they changed in the recent update, and honestly, even what they've done in the US is kind of in this territory too. But everything with the EU has been a blatant, like, you told us to do this, we're not going to do it. Instead, we're going to do this other thing that sort of dances around what you told us to do. And it's clearly not in the spirit. It's not even in the letter of what the EU told them to do in many cases. They're I agree with a lot of people who've said I think Apple's trying to get sued. I'm kind of wondering if Apple is like playing chicken. Is this a situation where maybe they want the EU to actually like fight them over this? Do they want to go to court and either maybe they're trying to prove like we have the right to do this, your laws say we have the right to do this, and we're going to keep doing it? Or are they trying to like call chicken and basically say, you know what, you can tell us that you want us to do this, but we're just going to tell you to F off, and if you try to force us, well, we'll just leave. Like, these are the two paths I see, and I can't tell what it is they're going for, but it seems like they're really just taking a hostile approach towards the EU at this stage.
yeah, and also the interesting element here is the Department of Justice in the U.S. is looking at Apple right now, and the Reuters article I read said that they could file an action as soon as this month. So, is the DOJ looking at this and being like, why don't we have the same thing the EU just did?
Yeah.
Or even just a watered down version of that where we tell like Apple explicitly to allow sideloading. I don't know. I think it's crazy. I think I've never read press releases like the ones Apple has put out about this, to the point where they're like basically crapping on their own product and their own software in an effort to say this is dangerous. And my absolute favorite part of this is over and over again they're like, all this was designed, all of our products were designed around the App Store, like that is the safest thing. And that, meanwhile, like at least once a month there's an app in the App Store that was malicious. Like literally while this was all happening, there was some fake LastPass app in the App Store. It's like, guys, I don't know if your solution is actually better or not. It seems like you also can't keep anything out.
Yeah. No, that the last oh god, I wish I'd found a link for that just to show it. But yeah, there was a fake LastPass, and that wasn't even the only one. There was another app that I don't think it got as much news, and I don't remember what it was, but it was some other fairly popular service. Somebody posted a fake version of it and managed to get a lot of installs just because.
And I mean, like that's not even covering like all of the apps that are paid apps or subscriptions for something that like absolutely does not need that. Like, I don't know for how long we had like flashlight apps that cost money or had like a recurring subscription. I know before there was the Chat GPT official app, there were like a bunch of wrapper apps that were, and it wasn't even the ones where it's like it's hooking directly into the APIs to like do stuff, so they need to pass that cost on. It was just like a web wrapper that cost money. Like App Store isn't as clean and squeaky as Apple would lead you to believe reading their press releases.
Yeah. And so far they've actually failed by any reasonable measure to prove that they're doing anything to basically be better than than any other company or any other service. Um, and so far, I mean, bringing this back to the Epic situation, literally the first company that said we're going to set up an app store, Apple has now shut them down. Now, okay, it's the first one, and it is the company that happens to have been very incendiary about it. But what happens in, say, a couple of months when inevitably, I think this is inevitable, whoever comes next, and there will definitely be somebody who comes next, what if Apple also declines them? I mean,
Yeah, well, I know the Mac app subscription set app. They announced that they are working on an iOS app store. So like, you know, same model as Mac, where you get a bunch of apps for a monthly subscription. But I don't know how far into that process they are. Like if they've tried, you know, all of the things that Apple could ban them for. But
yeah, and there are rumors that apparently Microsoft wants to set up one so that it can peddle the Office apps, and they're
I would imagine like Game Pass might play into that. That was
very
their angle
possibly.
all along. That Game Pass would also unlock some iPhone games.
And yeah, there are, I don't know,
Although
I've heard rumors of about a dozen different companies that are looking at setting up their own app stores. But
presumably there's gonna be at least like one kind of somewhat normal one, because it seems like Google would want to put like it. I'm thinking mostly for like all the web browsers that want to try making actual iPhone versions. Like where does Google put Chrome, like real Chrome for iPhone, or where does Mozilla put the? I don't know if Mozilla like is actually fully working on a native iPhone version using the new APIs. I think I saw some of them complaining that they were stupid, but yeah.
yeah, all things considered, it looks like Apple set up a bunch of rules, and whether or not they let other companies be involved, I have a weird feeling that this is quickly going to devolve into, do we think you're going to put up apps that we don't care about, like Microsoft and let's say Mozilla and Google, or are you going to put up apps that we specifically want to make sure that we're profiting on, and that we're not going to let you work around our methods? At which point they're pointing to Epic and very likely some other game companies.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just feels like Apple is again sort of taunting the EU, obviously taunting competitors, and this has to go wrong at some point. It's becoming too obvious that Apple has no regard for what the EU wants. Okay. Anyway, so
Yeah, I have nothing.
yeah, I guess enough of that. Let's see. Tell us about Google trying to tackle spammy, low quality content. Sorry, what?
Don't do that, Cody.
What? I just coughed.
Okay. I need to pull up this like because I forget the exact words they used.
You.
I mean, I know what they said. I just don't. They're Google and the SEO people like their special terms when they could just use English like the rest of us. Yeah. So one of the really fun things about the generative AI boom is that if you don't give a shit about anything, you can set up a website and tell ChatGPT to write an article about anything. It will not be good. It will have a lot of factual errors, but you can do it. And then you can publish that article. And then maybe, if especially if it's something like really obscure that no other sites with an actual reputation are trying to write articles about, you might get clicks from Google. You might show up on that first page of Google search. And that has happened a lot. And back when the AI revolution kicked off, I guess mostly last year, Google's official position was like that they wouldn't really treat AI content differently. So basically, like, you could use it if you want, but theoretically, the pages would still be subject to the same, like, you know, quality, whatever quality checks exist. You know, you can't spam, just like, so there's no functional difference between like you spamming with ChatGPT and you spamming with a human writer is basically their position. So that hasn't really changed, but what they are doing is sort of going harder after specific types of spam, and notably the ones that are pretty easy to detect. So the main one they're going after is what they call scaled content abuse, which is basically where just, yeah, you have a site that's pumping out like 1,000 articles a day. Like, there's like zero chance humans are involved here. And if Google finds you're doing that, you will be regarded as spam and very sharply kicked off Google search results, deprioritized a lot. So that's good. I honestly have not run into a lot of that myself in terms of like very blatant AI generative garbage. I have run into a lot of articles where I'm reading, I'm like, this seems not real. That's been my experience. Or what is very common in journalism now, where there was an AI who wrote some part of it at some point, and humans have gone in and done more work to it. That doesn't, Google's not targeting any of that right now. Also, because like no one knows how to detect that. That's the main issue.
It's one thing to say, oh, can we detect something that was very plainly, obviously 100% AI,
right?
Versus, oh, somebody used AI to generate a paragraph, then they went back and were like, all right, these each sentence needs to be changed to actually read like a human wrote it, and maybe correct some incorrect things. At that point, Google has trouble detecting that because it is effectively human written. It's just, you know, it started with help from AI. And look, I'm gonna interject my own opinion on this. I actually don't have a problem with that. If you want to use AI to generate the bones of an article, and then you go back through and correct it, fix everything, and rewrite it to actually be concise and human written, yeah, okay, I don't care. That's fine.
Yeah. Like if it's something very straightforward, and again, you actually are checking it to make sure it's right, I don't have a huge issue with it.
Yeah, as long as you're not doing what Red Ventures was doing, where they were just straight up like, "Hey, can you write financial advice articles for us?"
And apparently not check any of it.
Yeah.
Like when that news broke and it was about like them getting, I forget exactly what it was. I think they were getting like the definition of APR wrong or something, but it was like something I recognize, which, you know, now you're in trouble. Because if I recognize a financial term that you use wrong, you're messing up a lot more that I'm not going to catch.
Right.
So
that's a catastrophe level sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, no spamming. Google said in their testing that their search results were 40% better with this spam change. or up to 40%. I guess I'm sure there's some searches where there's going to be a lot of spam and someone's going to be basically none.
And it does likely come down to I'm just guessing, I don't actually know it, but I'm assuming the things that normal people don't feel is worth writing, because it's probably never going to have like a high number search result, or a high number of people searching for a thing. There's probably more spam for that, because it's easy to generate, and there's not much of a drawback, and there's not much competition. Whereas something that is obviously going to be very popular, like how to take a screenshot on your Galaxy S24, chuckle, yeah, obviously, you should probably not have that be AI written, because there's human written versions of this that will obviously be more human written. Also,
yeah,
please don't search for that, because don't reward sites that write that crap.
So that's the spammy stuff. There's also two other very specific types of AI spam that they're pushing back against. One of them, which like I don't know if I've ever seen necessarily, is something they called site reputation abuse, which is they define as, for example, a third party might publish payday loan reviews on a trusted educational website to gain ranking benefits from the site. Such content ranking highly on search can confuse or mislead visitors who may have vastly different expectations for content on a given website. So basically, like if your website is publishing stuff written by someone else and it doesn't have anything to do with what your site is about, then that might raise some red flags. I would be interested to know where sponsored content comes into play here, because what I described is basically sponsored content, except usually it's related to whatever the site is about. So that's the caveat. But I don't see. Yeah, I don't really know how they determine that. I don't know if they try to figure out. Obviously Google is not going to tell anyone how this works, because then someone will work around it, and so they never do that. But maybe they're being like very targeted with that. But yeah, like I don't know if I've really seen examples of that necessarily. I've seen sponsored posts on website that seem kind of far from the topic of whatever the website is about, but like might still be fine. If there's like a, I don't know, like a sponsored post for a VPN on like, I don't know, a politics website, I'm like, sure, I guess. I don't like kind of maybe weird, but I don't know. That seems okay. But I guess maybe they might be looking at more sketchy stuff, like they said, like the payday loan stuff. Maybe there's an entire industry or something I don't know about. But.
So my theory on this, and I'm not going to name names, but we both know somebody who runs a smaller site. But it is, it's a reputable news source kind of site. And this particular person, I don't think would do this, but I think somebody in a similar situation might receive emails, certainly the kind that you and I both get on like several times a day, asking, hey, can we set up a collaboration where we post something on your site for free? We'll do all the writing, we swear, and you'll get views, and it's going to be awesome. We both benefit. I have a feeling that's what this is targeting. Maybe there is some other version of this that we just aren't exposed to, but I could kind of see that being the thing. This feels like one of those sort of look, you have a site, it has some amount of traffic that we think is worth paying for. We'll pay you to post some garbage.
Yeah, that could be it.
And yeah, I think that's what this is probably in relation to. And then they also mentioned expired domain abuse, which this is an old scam. There's not really anything new here. It's a classic, here's a domain that used to get some amount of traffic that was maybe relevant, maybe not. And somebody decided to pay the few dollars to take over registration after the original site like died off. And now they want that, you know, they're taking advantage of whatever value that site used to have.
Yeah, and I know when The Verge covered this, they mentioned there was some website that got caught doing this recently that was used to be kind of high profile. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, and that's not necessarily even related to AI stuff.
Yeah. But hey, it's good that Google is at least looking into more of that stuff.
Yeah, again, the big caveat with all this is like, is it actually going to work? Because it feels like every time Google has updated its search algorithms recently, one of their main goals has been reduce the spam, and yet the spam keeps on coming, and now Google search is very unusable at times.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like anyone has a good answer for how to do this, and now kids are just searching in TikTok because that's a better that's somehow going to get them information more reliably.
You know, that has been a talking point for years, and I'm convinced it's probably true for a few things, but completely BS for others.
I have seen someone my age do that in real life. They were searching for things to do. Like I was on a trip with someone, and it was someone else who was visiting, and they were like, all right, what's something cool to do in this city? So they just put the city name in TikTok, and I was like, that's kind of weird, but okay.
You know,
Sure.
okay, but that's the example almost everybody I've heard saying that they've encountered it. Like, yeah, the what to do in such and such city.
Yeah.
I swear that's the example everybody has.
That's a very different question than like, why is how to fix Windows 11 crashing.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's searching that in TikTok, but maybe I should investigate. Maybe I should make a spacebar TikTok account and start porting my episodes over. Read them out in funny voices.
I dare you.
And also put Subway Surfer above and below.
No, you probably shouldn't use Subway Surfer. You should use Overwatch.
Myself playing Overwatch.
Yeah, yourself.
But it's
Overwatch.
It's never yourself playing the video game. That's part of the laziness.
Oh, that's true.
You find someone else playing. So I'll take your Overwatch.
Okay. Hey, I have some pretty good plays on there lately.
Okay, I will not compensate you whatsoever. Just to be clear.
Why change a pattern that you've had going so well?
It's very true.
It's not like I pay you either, so it works. Yeah, so anyway, I appreciate that Google says it's doing this. Meanwhile, not naming names, but we're both very aware of a company that their people have been literally at Google's offices, like bragging about being at Google's offices, rubbing shoulders, and
you gotta stop being like, both we both know who we're talking about, because it's eventually gonna go in like a clip compilation that I'm gonna have to watch in court.
Nope, I'm not naming names.
Okay.
We could have both read about this.
You keep implicating me. You can say.
I'm not going to say.
I mean, you can say like, I know of a site. Don't implicate me.
Oh, okay.
I know nothing. I'm very stupid. You know.
Okay.
I've been playing Fallout 4 the entire time.
I know of a company that we're both aware of.
No, I explicitly said don't do that.
No, I changed it.
I
know something. We're both just aware of that the company exists.
I'm going to jail.
Anyway, Yeah, it known spammers aren't exactly unfamiliar to Google, and Google is on semi-friendly terms with at least a few. So, you know, it's not the best situation anyway. Whatever
Yeah,
whatever they're
this
saying that they're trying to fix, there's kind of clear evidence that they're either not trying that hard or they're only trying to hit a certain subset.
yeah, this is what the discussions keep coming back to, where again, everyone has been saying this for years. I really like the article The Verge wrote recently. I think the title was like "How Google Perfected the Web," but basically just going out of like this has been a two-way street for the past 10 years of Google wanting something and sites becoming meticulously crafted explicitly to appease Google in this one way, but in a way that maybe makes the overall reading or just anything related to the site worse. And then Google changes something else, and then that happens again. And now we're at a point where, again, like we have a bunch of like the reason we have fucking recipe websites that start off with a 10 paragraph essay is because at some point, I don't know if Google said it or if it was just the SEO people who made this up, but someone somewhere got the idea that more words makes Google like you more. So everything has more words.
Yeah. Um
Like just remove, like if that wasn't a factor, immediately I'm sure search results would be a lot better. But that's how they try to determine like what's quality content apparently means just talking for too long. That's what that means.
yeah. And as the way that a different article put it, sites are developed so that Google can read them, not so that people can read them.
Yes. Also, literally the purpose of Google AMP.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Which there is some irony to the fact that at this stage, Google is developing tools to kill the sites that Google relies on for those tools. But that's been an ongoing issue for years. But I would also draw a comparison to cellular companies, or rather phone companies in general, where many people for years have said, and they're not wrong, these companies don't have a good incentive to shut down spam callers, because those spam callers pay a lot of money. And you know, the reality is a lot of these companies benefit from those spam callers in one way or another. So they'll do things to shut down the worst ones. They'll do things to maybe take away some of those companies, especially the ones who aren't really contributing to a profit margin. But at the end of the day, they don't want to stop most of those companies because there is profit to be made by having them there. And they either extort those companies to pay a little bit more or differently in one case or another, or they work out various deals, and it's profit for them. So they're not that inclined to actually stop the problems that people have. They're inclined to just make it hard enough and more expensive. And it's a benefit to everybody, supposedly, except of course the consumer.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's the Google stuff. I hope it makes something better, but again, I have not really run into any examples of anything here. My issue is more just, you know, the human written content that's written by people who don't know what they're talking about, and it's too verbose, and that's not something that like Google can really fix. At least without like vastly different incentives being in place for this stuff, or more importantly, the thing Google is never willing to do, which is have a human reading things. They are allergic to humans doing work. So
So, on a brief tangent, and speaking a very connected tangent though.
Brief tangent after a very long tangent, yes.
Yes. This YouTube channel has actually lost its advanced privileges as of just 2 hours ago. So if you happen to look down in the description, you'll notice there are no actual links pointing to Cash App, Patreon, and Streamlabs, which of course, if you would like to support the channel, I do encourage that you use. I had to put spaces in between the HTTPS and the actual URL because I'm not allowed to have links in description for the next somewhere between day and 2 months, depending on how long it takes for this to fix itself. This is evidently an ongoing, constant complaint. It just seems to happen to channels for no particular reason. Obviously, this one has plenty of channel history, and that is one of the criteria for having advanced features. You're supposed to have 2 months of regular channel history. Shockingly, I think this channel has that, but
allegedly.
Yes, allegedly. But yeah, so this is a known issue. There are literally hundreds of Reddit threads with people complaining about this. It just seems to randomly happen. Anyway, so if you happen to look down there and feel inclined to support the channel, sorry, but you have to copy and paste the link and delete the space. And yet again, this is a side effect of Google does not hire humans to do jobs that humans should probably do because Google is bad at them. So, speaking of completely unrelated things and kind of traveling back to Apple, let's talk about some of Apple's new products for the week. Because Apple released new things.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
We can neither confirm nor deny. Also, this will probably be my last one, and then I need to go get food.
Well, in that case, let's talk about the Microsoft Copilot stuff instead.
Oh. I already forgot what I put in. What is it?
Improvements for Windows 11. Because I don't know jack about this, and...
No, Okay, so this was a weird thing where Microsoft did kind of a major Windows update, but of course they only discussed the Copilot part.
Okay.
So where did I put this? And I'll you know what, I'll wrap the Android subsystem stuff in here too, because why not?
Oh, I was going to.
Okay. So yeah, Microsoft released a somewhat big Windows update. It's not going to be the big one for the year. That's probably going to be in the fall. Probably going to be called Windows 11 22H2 or 24H2. Sorry. And there might be a Windows 12 also this year. Who knows? But this update slightly improves the Copilot bar in Windows 11, which is the thing they want everyone to use. It's so the annoying thing with all their Copilot integrations that it's basically just a web view and everything. It's basically almost the same exact web view. The integration in Windows 11 is a little bit better. So in this update, they added support for the plugins that you've been able to use in Copilot in like the desktop web app and a couple other places. It also now has a few more commands for controlling the underlying system. So now, like, you can put in Copilot, like, what's my IP address? And it'll go open the part in your settings that shows you the IP address. So we're just back to Cortana, but with many more extra steps involved. And it's still a little bit interesting. Again, I would really like them to try to make a Copilot app for Mac that has like a little bit of this. But like they do support like dragging in a file from whatever app into the Copilot window and use that as context, um, or selecting text in like any app on your computer and then going over to the Copilot and like asking it to do stuff based on that text. There's a couple cool little things in here, but besides the Copilot stuff, um, there's they have a generative erase feature in the Photos app now, which is basically just Photoshop's content aware fill, which is kind of interesting. They updated the Clipchamp video editor, which still sucks. Um, they added the widget panel in Windows 11 now has separate sections for the actual widgets and then the garbage spewing from MSN that was previously interwoven into your widgets list, that no one wanted. And I wrote an article complaining about this, so I'm going to pretend like I made a difference here. Windows 11 also now has the ability to, if your PC has a stylus, you can now just write in text fields in a lot of apps. So basically, how Apple Pencil works on iPad. A couple other small changes, but that's most of it. So nice little update for Windows 11. Again, they're still having so much trouble getting anyone to use Windows 11. The adoption rate for Windows 11 is still terrible. Windows 10 dies in 2 years. Is it 2? Yeah, it's October of 25, so under 2 years.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Yeah, adoption is obviously, Windows has always had a problem with that, but it is kind of funny how this seems like it should have been one of the easy ones, and Microsoft chose to make this hard.
Yeah, it's the hardware stuff. I'm sure is like 90% of it, but it is also the same thing that happened with Windows 10 and 8, where people get freaked out by the Windows as a service stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They get freaked out by questionable AI that might be using your stuff for training data. Who knows? Like again, they don't even have Copilot in Europe, as far as I know. So like all the laptops that are now shipping with Copilot keys, those just open the Windows search in those countries. So and it sucks because like there's a lot of stuff in Windows 11 that like I actually really like. There are a lot of I've talked about this many times, so I won't say it all again. But there are a lot of things in Windows 11 that have been in there, or there's a lot of things that have been in Windows for like a decade or two and really badly needed to be reworked or removed. And Windows 11 is actually Microsoft going in and doing that work. They finally added tabs to the file manager. That was something they said they were going to do like 10 years ago. They reworked and merged all the different like media player apps. A lot of apps got UI updates. There's a new email app that a lot of people don't like because it works weird, but they made a new email app. But all that is soured by, oh, there's more crap in here I don't want. Oh, I can't use a local can't use a local account without weird workarounds, et cetera, et cetera. So, and they just keep doing it to themselves, and eventually, and they win in the end because eventually, you just have to buy a new computer for something, and then they get you because the new computer has Windows 11 on it.
Yeah, it's almost like how if you buy a smartphone, you'll never be able to get a smartphone that supports an older version of Android or iOS. You're pretty much bound to just always get something, and this isn't for bad reasons, but
yeah, no, like as soon as Windows 10 is dead, like I'm as anti like upselling in my operating system as you can be. But like, please, for the love of God, do not use a unsupported Windows version. I cannot stress that enough. You are going to get so much malware. All of your files will be locked away until you pay crypto to someone. It's not a fun time. Or use whatever version of Windows you want, but do not connect it to the internet.
Yes.
So if you've got old Windows XP PC that's there to play World of Warcraft, great. Don't let it online. But it's fine the way it is.
I like how you specifically name an online service.
The online game, yeah.
As your example.
Maybe just SimCity 4. You can
okay.
that.
Okay, that's a little better.
Yeah.
But sort of on that topic of smartphones and Android, Windows 11 is also going to be killing off one of the features that, of course, everybody hyped up at one stage, which is that you'd be able to natively run Android apps.
Yeah, so they said, is it March 2025? They
yes.
put the date in? Yeah, so they are discontinuing the Windows subsystem for Android, which is the hypervisor-based VM they made for running Android apps, mostly like you would install the Amazon App Store, and then you would use that to install whatever the Amazon App Store had, which was not a lot of apps. So I'm sure this was not used for its intended purpose by many people. But
I think that depends on how you perceive the intended purpose, and I know that's a bit of a weird point the intended but
the intended purpose of installing things from the Amazon App Store is what I would put it.
Right, but what I mean is, I think if you ask Microsoft, the intended purpose was, hey, we see a ton of apps being written for Android, and we'd really like those apps to actually be available to Windows users too, because people are complaining that they can't do stuff on their laptop or desktop that you can do on your phone. I think if you were to ask Amazon what the intended purpose is, it's to sell their currency that they use for games that have in-app purchases, which basically means Amazon probably really loved this approach because, it was a huge funnel of money for them to sell to people, to whales who play a lot of games. And they didn't want that money to be going to Steam or anybody else. They wanted it to go through them. So yeah, I like I said, I think it depends on whose intended purpose you see. And I think Amazon, I've always thought Amazon was happy with this deal. I'm guessing Microsoft wasn't as happy, though I do have another theory in a second.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, this was always a weird thing where it's like at a base level, this is very stupid. Like the fact that Windows has no apps, so somehow a solution for this is to make an entire virtual machine that has to be running for these apps and then run the apps in the VM. And that is the only way. Like, I remember when this was announced, like Microsoft kept using TikTok as an example. It's like, great, I will create an entire virtual machine for TikTok so I can use TikTok on my computer. That on its face is very stupid, but I will say, and again, I never use this for the intended purpose. The very brief time I had a Windows 11 laptop, I used this to check the Casa smart home app on my computer. That was because, again, like a lot of smart home stuff just doesn't have computer apps, so that was one used for that. So so that being said, that the core idea was kind of stupid. WSA was legitimately a very impressive technical feat. Like, Microsoft put in a lot. Like, Microsoft is really good at virtual machines. You can say what you want about them everywhere else, but like, they know how to make they're good with the hypervisor stuff. They're good with VMs. I do think that, like, again, I didn't use it a ton, but based on what I did use, I thought WSA was more impressive than the Android compatibility layer on Chrome OS. Like
Oh yeah.
the apps felt a little bit better. They were porting new Android versions to this pretty quickly, which Google famously has been lagging on because it doesn't really matter. Um, but like they had a lot of integrations working. They were for a while they were working on getting like file access working very well. So you just see like your Windows files in the Android apps, but like in a way that made sense for permissions, and you could use like camera stuff. And again, it was primarily for apps, but there were a lot of games it could do too. So I think it was very technically impressive. So that's kind of the reason why I'm bummed it's going away. Beyond like business reasons, I'm sure like Microsoft's still in the oops, we bought Activision. We need to cut money some places. So
Yeah.
maybe this feature that like maybe isn't used as much as we wanted, but requires maintaining AOSP on top of Windows isn't like the best use of resources. I don't know, but I am sad because that was legitimately impressive. I think maybe if it had a slightly different angle, maybe could have worked better. They were never going to get the Google Play Store on there, but maybe something else here. Like, I don't know. Again, like this does go back to the core issue of like Windows should just have native apps and they need to focus on that. But also like there's other times where like yeah, it'd be cool to hack an Android app or game onto my computer in cases where there's no chance of it being on a PC otherwise.
Yeah, and
Um,
the example I've certainly had of this is, and it related to smart home apps, but just companion apps in general. Almost every company that makes any kind of hardware product now, they will make an app for iOS and Android, and then there's like a maybe 10% chance that they make something for PC. Uh, a few companies certainly do. I work with several of them where they actually are pretty good about making PC apps.
yeah,
Well,
or
PC and
just
Mac.
anything smart home like Wi-Fi security, anything like Eero doesn't have a fucking computer app. I have to go get my phone to check what the IP address or something on my network is.
Yeah.
My home security camera does not have any way to check it from the
And
computer.
Google Wi-Fi is the same story. Like
Yeah.
they,
Yeah, like
of course that
all
woke up
basically
some-
all mesh networks are like this for some reason. I don't know where we
Yeah.
went, but we went wrong somewhere.
And again, like I can think of several other companies that have issues like this. If you've bought, just a good example of this, wireless earbuds. There are so few companies that make companion apps for configuring or using your wireless earbuds. Well, configuring. Obviously, you can connect them over Bluetooth to just about anything, but if you want to connect them and change settings, if you want to configure them, if you want to do anything with them, you pretty much have to do that on a phone. You can't do that on a PC. I can genuinely only think of one company I've used or I've found that has software for their earbuds that allows you like full configuration, and those earbuds are not meant for regular consumers. It was HP Poly earbuds. Those are 100% meant to only be sold to enterprise customers. So, these are like that's not a good example of this. So yeah, if you wanted to run those types of companion apps on your PC, the only way to do it was through something like this.
Yeah, so sucks that all the work that went into this is apparently just going in the gutter. Um, but again, it would also be nice if Microsoft could actually get people to make Windows apps and like actual Windows apps, not Electron.
Yeah.
It is. I know. I was talking to someone in another chat, and they mentioned that like actually Apple of all companies is the one that seemingly most recently is actually building good native Windows apps because they just finished replacing iTunes with all new Windows apps. That are like fully native and everything. It's like, oh wow, how the turntables have, my goodness.
Okay, but we're also describing literally the highest market cap company in the world.
Right, but it's also the one that was famous for bad Windows software.
Yeah, but like I'm not inclined to give them a lot of credit here because if anybody can afford to do this, it's them. And they actually have incentives to do it. Maybe they're not as strong of incentives as, ironically, Microsoft itself. But, yeah, it's hard to credit them too much because at that stage, every company should probably be doing it. Cough, cough. Google, get your crap together. But, yeah. Pretty much any company at that scale should be able to make native apps for the biggest operating systems.
You'd think.
You would think.
You would think that. The Slack app thinks differently.
Oh, Slack.
A very silly Slack app. Slack. I'm going to slack off now.
Yeah, you are. Yes. Slacker. All right. Well, I don't blame you. That being said, there aren't too many topics left, so that's cool.
Yep.
So, what do you feel like pitching this week?
Spacebar.news. Go there. That's it. I wrote about the Apple thing recently, and I regurgitated some of that here, but you can read the original thing.
Yeah, okay. That sounds accurate. Cool. Well, thanks for joining. We will catch you certainly. Wow, I just realized the exposure on my camera is super wrong. But yeah, we will catch you hopefully next week. There's not any crazy tech events going on that I'm aware of, so.
All right. Well, bye-bye.
Adios. Thanks for coming by. All right. And we will switch views. Also get that one queued up. Hooray. Okay, and let's see. Austin saying, never give up Clippy. One of these days, I'm just suspicious. I think Copilot will 100% be Clippy will be resurrected with an AI background. It will happen. Anyway, my quick kind of final thought on this is I'm certainly sad to see Android apps leaving Windows as a subsystem or as a option. And I've now said this to a few people. Pretty much everyone disagrees with me. And this is not a hard theory, but I do vaguely question if this is maybe less about Microsoft's perspective on this or Microsoft's interest in this, and a little bit more having to do with Amazon's disinterest in Android apps. It seems like Amazon has been losing interest in Amazon apps. We've certainly heard rumors that they're taking Fire TV OS away from Android and steering it towards their own in-house OS, like fully in-house OS as opposed to using Android as a backdrop. And it does seem like Amazon's interest in Android apps has just been dwindling over the years anyway. At this stage, I don't know how much money they're really even making off of that in-game currency that I mentioned before. Just for example, I don't watch any of these channels anymore. Not that I watched them a whole lot to begin with, but I do remember a few streamers who routinely had sponsorship deals with Amazon. So, like every few months, Amazon would pay them to basically do a lot of in-stream ads saying, hey, if you want to get lower cost currencies to spend in the game, do it through Amazon. You'll be able to get more or better or cheaper, whatever, if you pay real money to Amazon and use that to buy currency, which you then transfer into the game, blah blah blah. So whales were a big fan of doing this because typically, just for example, if you wanted to spend it, just a hypothetical number, if you want to spend what would be, let's say, a $500, or well, let's just say $100. If you were going to buy $100 of whatever in a game, then on Amazon it would cost you like $80. Through any other service, Google Play and Apple, it's going to cost you the full 100. Or, maybe you got some Google Play credit or whatever, but like it's still going to cost you the full amount or very nearly. On Amazon, you buy enough currency, you get it up to like a 20% discount. And as I say this, I feel like I'm now shilling for Amazon. Amazon, if you'd like to advertise through here, get a hold of me. So the thing is, though, I haven't heard of those brand deals happening a whole lot in the last like year and a half. And it kind of leaves me thinking, maybe Amazon's just not making enough money through this anymore to justify the cost and supporting the platform. I don't hear people buying like Fire tablets even at the rate that they used to, which makes me think that that's another avenue where Amazon's just not really making its profits. I'm kind of wondering if they maybe see that Android is not really a profitable path for them anymore. And as a result, maybe they're preparing, not like rushing to do this, but maybe they're preparing to close down their app store. And if that's the case, I mean, Microsoft basically built its subsystem to cater to Amazon, or rather in conjunction with Amazon. And granted, if Amazon were to close this, if they close their app store and Microsoft in turn, sorry, I'm saying this very poorly. But if Amazon closes their app store, it's not that Microsoft has to close their subsystem. They don't have to tear down this feature that obviously has some function. But then they also don't really have a partner in this. And it seems that they're not going to partner with Google. And so, if they don't really have an incentive to keep this operating, they don't really have a justification. It's not enough just to say we want apps running on Windows. They need some sort of profit incentive to justify the cost of maintaining this. And I think with Amazon going away, or if Amazon is going away, it takes away some of Microsoft's potential profit avenue too. So I could easily be wrong. Everyone I've mentioned this theory to seems to think that it is wrong. So, maybe I'm way off base, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be too surprised if in somewhere in the next 18 months, we see Amazon saying, you know what, we're kind of done with the App Store. Thanks for sticking with us. It was a fun ride. Now go pound sand or come support our new platform that we're going to call Fire Apps or something. I don't know. So yeah, that's my closing take on that. Anyway, traveling back to Apple, because of course we have to do the Apple shilling thing. Apple announced a bunch of products this week, and oh boy, are they producty. So there are new 13 and 15 inch MacBook Airs with M3 chips, which yay, that's nice. Obviously never going to shun updates to the airline. The notable or semi-notable point is the original MacBook Air is now officially and completely out of production, or rather will be very shortly. It's very likely it was in production up to a certain point and they just have stock left over to sell. Regardless, yeah, the original M1 chip is basically now out of the equation. Apple's big marketing push on this was the typical, hey, the M3 is high performance, it's fast, it's wonderful. All the stuff that we already kind of know and expect. I mean, look, the M3 is not a new chip. It has been in the MacBook Pros. Not to mention, I believe, was there an M3 Studio? I want to say there was. I believe there was a Mac Mini on the M3 already. So, you know, the M3 is not a new chip. So putting it in the Air, not exactly new and surprising. Apple also really hyped up the AI capabilities of the M3. I don't know. Yeah, okay, here it is. So they very specifically hyped up. Yeah, here's the paragraph, and this is just worth reading out directly because it's kind of hilarious. Okay, just reading out directly. Quote, with a broad ecosystem of apps that deliver advanced AI features, users can do everything from checking their homework with AI math assistants in GoodNotes 6 to automatically enhancing photos in Pixelmator Pro to removing background noise from a video using CapCut. Combined with the unified memory architecture of Apple Silicon, MacBook Air can also run optimized AI models, including large language models and diffusion models for image generation locally with great performance. In addition to on-device performance, MacBook Air supports cloud-based solutions, enabling users to run powerful productivity and creative apps that tap into the power of AI, such as Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, Canva, and Adobe Firefly. Oh yeah, I forgot to close that. Okay. Oh, they haven't put the M3 in a Mac Mini or Studio yet. Okay, well, that's good. They will. I mean, that's just it's a matter of time. Please make 16 megabytes of RAM standard on the M4. Oh, things Apple cannot figure out how to do. I don't get me wrong. Honestly, I kind of understand why, because it's not the craziest thing to have a model available for the proverbial, you know, your next door neighbor or grandma who just use it for browsing Facebook. But no, seriously, 8 gigs really does not feel like enough. Anyway, one thing that stood out to me about this paragraph, well, a couple of things. First, and I believe, I want to say it was Nils said this. Maybe I could be mistaken, but this whole last sentence, it is just naming cloud-based solutions, which literally any device from a old smartphone to the highest end computer, they're all capable of using cloud-based solutions. You don't, like, there's nothing about the M3 chip that benefits from this. It is a ridiculous statement. They didn't need to include it. This feels like SEO. It is 100% SEO. They needed to find a way to convince people that they're making good AI decisions for their hardware, when in reality, yeah. No, it's literally anything can use cloud-based solutions. Anyway, not really important. The other observation I made is name anything in here that is made by Apple. There isn't anything. Now, in the previous paragraph, they mentioned, let's see, macOS delivers intelligent features that enhance productivity and creativity, so users can enable powerful camera features, real-time speech-to-text, translation, text predictions, visual understanding, accessibility features, and much more. That mentions OS features, but what I don't see in any of this is a mention of Final Cut. I don't see Logic Pro. I don't see GarageBand. I don't see any of their Office apps. None of Apple's like actual apps are using AI, at least not in any appreciable means. They're highlighting other companies' apps that use AI, and I can't help but think that this is either Apple sort of being forced into a position where they want to announce stuff but can't because it's going to be bigger announcements come, let's say, WWDC, or do they just actually not have anything at all? I don't know. But it feels like they are in a weird situation where they're putting AI or the AI hardware in, but not making good use of it. So, yeah, this just does not. It feels like something's missing. Speaking of something missing, can I fix my? I think that fixes it. Okay. Green screen is maybe not quite working yet. Okay, maybe that didn't fix it. Kind of hard to tell on my screen. Anyway, I'll just bump it a little further. Oh my. Okay, that fixed it. Yay. So yeah, the AI capabilities of the M3 may not be getting put necessarily all the way to their maximum potential. And yeah, that seems like maybe missed opportunity territory. We'll see. And Austin, just the mere mention of the M4 makes me want to say I have a funny feeling that the M4 is probably going to be one of their, or I'm hoping it's one of their bigger evolutions, because the M2 was obviously really no more than a spec bump, along with fixing a few features here and there. The M3, it feels like it took a similar step up as like Tensor 3 did, but maybe it doesn't have as much to it either. The M3, it was well hyped, but I don't see the evidence that it really made much of like a significant, more than like a iterative change. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe the M4 will be their big tick year. We'll see. Anyway, so the list of things that they did with the new Airs is fine. There are several small enhancements. None of it really jumps out though. It's kind of a lot of stuff that's borrowed from the MacBook Pro, which good. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see. They also, it's not in this one. Did they mention it in any of these other posts? Because they didn't. Yeah, I'm not seeing it listed here in their newsroom, which is actually kind of weird. So they did launch a few other products, including a new keyboard for the iPad, or iPad Pro rather. Which, okay, good, yay. It's missized. It's a mess. I'm not going to say much about it beyond that. What I couldn't help but notice, and I think that this is a huge problem, there are no USB-C peripherals for Mac yet. They somehow, this is now going a little too long. They have not gotten around to launching USB-C Magic Trackpad, Magic Keyboard, or Magic Mouse. I'm just curious what they're waiting for, because they've now had a couple of Mac launches since USB-C happened in the iPhone. They should be killing off everything that is Lightning related, and yet they haven't done it with the 3 key peripherals. And look, I get it. I can accept that this is a thing, but I need to make this clear. I'm still using a keyboard that is really old. This is the keyboard I got with my original MacBook Pro. I bought this in, I think, 2010. Yes, for real. I'm using a keyboard from 2010. It actually has a problem with the button on the side now. So turning it on is easy enough. Turning it off, holding the button, is actually kind of becoming a problem. Plus, this uses AA batteries. I kind of just want to replace this so bad. And I'm not going to do it till there's a USB keyboard. So hurry up, Apple. Because pretty soon I might have to actually start looking to like Logitech or something like that. Anyway, so moving right along. Oh yeah. Yeah, okay. I don't have as much to say on this as I probably would have, in part because I'm getting a little tired. But so there's apparently a new bill in the works that might ban TikTok. Look, Florida has already kind of gone down this road, except they're banning all social media for teens. And a couple of other states have tried either taking on TikTok directly or more broadly hitting social media in one way or another. But yeah, apparently at the federal level, there is a bill that would punish companies for distributing TikTok from their app stores. This would not be a criminal ban, so to speak. This isn't an enforced ban, rather it's a civil penalty where the companies could be sued for financial amounts for distributing the app. I think I want to say it was 5,000 per instance. Is that correct? Yeah. So if a company distributes an app that is on a list, and TikTok would presumably be the first app on that list, then the company distributing it would be on the hook for 5,000 per install, which is a interesting approach. To me, I get the logic on this. It does make some sense. But I think it is also problematic because this is a shameless attempt at, I don't want to call it censorship, but rather it is a shameless anti-competitive and xenophobic strategy. I get the argument that China, maybe not the best, maybe not the friendliest of countries, and maybe not the best behaved. I don't dispute that at all. But the notion that they want to set up a law that basically says we're going to casually add apps belonging to quote unquote foreign adversaries, which is a very generalized term. Yeah, it feels like kind of a sneaky way just to say, we're really just going to force U.S. companies to be like, we're going to pick U.S. companies as the winners, or at least anyone that isn't originating from a country that somebody decides that they don't like. How all of this is going to work, who maintains the list, these are things that don't really seem properly explained, at least not in most of the articles that I've seen. And this, it just screams to me that this isn't the right way to handle this. Not only that, but honestly, like, it feels so politically driven rather than for practical purposes. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of this particular approach. I'm not a fan of this bill, but I get what they're going for. So that being said, we'll see what happens to TikTok. I guess part of this also stems from the fact that I've seen how the U.S. government is approaching DJI. Like they've been dancing around the topic of banning DJI for years. This is now becoming like this is an ongoing drama as a inch closer to a full ban without actually doing it. I'm curious when the shoe's gonna drop and they're just gonna outright say, you know what? Yeah, we don't want to allow any company to do certain things ever again, and we're just going to also kind of shut out companies from certain countries. It feels like that's what's coming, and so far I don't see that as necessarily a good strategy. Anyway, so yeah, that's my immediate take on this. There's probably a lot more to be said here, but at the moment, it's got to stop there. Because until we see this actually playing out, and whether or not this bill even actually gets signed, because so far it's passed Congress. I don't recall if it has gone to the Senate yet. Yeah, it has not passed the Senate yet, as far as I can tell. So until it passes the Senate and then ultimately reaches the president, I don't think there's a lot to say to this. But speaking of bills, and this is the final topic of today, that's probably good because I can feel my voice starting to go. Talking about a fun little bill that happens to land close to home for me. Oregon has almost passed. Wait, yeah, it has not passed it yet, but it very likely will. And actually, this was posted yesterday, so it's possible this has actually been signed since looking into this. But Oregon has passed a right to repair bill that is a little bit different than previous right to repair bills, and I'm a fan of this mostly. This one basically bans a practice that Apple has been doing, and John Deere and a few other companies are also kind of notorious for this. Basically having parts that can only be used in the core device if they are made by first parties or otherwise have some sort of DRM attached to them. So in other words, this would eliminate things like, for example, using third-party displays, screens made for a smartphone. So if let's say you break the display on your iPhone, currently you would have to bring that iPhone into Apple, purchase a display made by and from Apple, and it would have to be installed either by Apple or an authorized repair technician, because they would have to actually contact Apple, have Apple effectively green light the specific serial number or whatever DRM method. They'd have to green light that specific display to work with that specific iPhone. Oregon's bill would basically say, nope, you have no choice. You have to make, or you cannot have these kinds of lockdowns. So in theory, if LG ever wanted to make an iPhone display as a repair unit, whether or not they would do this is up for whatever discussion, but they would be able to make one, and you'd be able to use that, install it on your iPhone, and move along with your day. And it would not require a certified technician who has access to Apple's systems. You could use any legitimate, or not legitimate, but ideally legitimate, but you could use any repair technician who just presumably knows what they're doing. So yay, this is a thing that we should have. Previous right to repair bills did not have any sort of clause or requirement like this, so cheers. This is great news. There are some caveats, minor in a technical sense, but there are some caveats. The biggest one is Oregon's bill, unlike the others, does not set a minimum time period for companies to support to support their products. So in other words, if a company releases a product, just again using an iPhone as an example, other states' rights to repair bill basically say, you know what, you have to make repair components for your devices for X number of years. Let's say it's 3, 5, 7, whatever. Oregon does not have this clause. So if a company decides that they don't want to, they can just officially say, you know what, in Oregon, we do not make replacement components. Therefore, you cannot, we're opting out of the right to repair policies. So they can do that. Whether or not that's a good thing is debatable. It's definitely not a good thing. But seeing as other states do require it, this creates kind of an interesting path where obviously everyone will still be able to get replacement parts for products because other states require it. But you may have problems in Oregon. I doubt it'll end up being problems with acquiring the repair parts. Rather, I could see there being a complication if you're ever trying to pressure repair parts that don't have DRM attached to them. And I could see Apple being petty and basically saying, yeah, we're not going to support repairs in Oregon because we are allowed to opt out of it, and we still want to keep our DRM in place. So I'm expecting this to kind of be a bit of a negative for Oregon, but seeing as the bill is now almost guaranteed to go in, I have a funny feeling it's going to be amended somewhere down the road, basically to add a no opt-out clause, or rather limiting the nature of opt-outs so that this kind of behavior won't be an option. Anyway, so yeah, that hits all the topics that I came prepared with. Let's see. I don't think I can speak a whole lot more. My voice is definitely going to hit its limits fairly shortly. But before I go, as a quick reminder, for those who would like to support the channel, there are links down below, or there would be links if I was allowed to make them links. Thank you, YouTube, for being buggy. But if you're willing to copy and paste what is down below in the description and remove the single space that is between the https:// portion and the actual URL, there is a space there. Remove it, and you can find links to Streamlabs, Cash App, and Patreon. And of course, huge thanks to those who support the channel: Austin, Carson, David, Diablo, and Curvy Mermaid. I almost screwed that up. Because believe me, you guys keep this channel going. Huge thanks to you. Anyway, let's see. I will be back this weekend for some game streams. That's pretty much the usual. There is a new Fame Pass for Fall Guys. There's probably going to be a little bit of a little bit more, I think, of Overwatch slipping into the streams. We'll see, but seems likely. Let's see. This week I am working crazy on reviews. There may be a photo editing stream coming up. I know I say that a lot, and it's so hard to keep up with because the timing is always kind of wonky. But I have a lot of stuff that I need to get through. So fair odds that that'll be happening. Let's see what else. I can't think of anything else. Anyway, so huge thanks to all of you for coming by, hanging out, being part of the conversation. Love having you all here, and I will catch you all in the next one. So with that, good night, everybody.